Today on Metaphysical Mississippi, we talk with Heidi Gill with Nourishing Practices. Thanks for joining us for Metaphysical Mississippi. I'm your host, Emily Hester. Today we have Heidi Gill with Nourishing Practices. How you doing, Heidi?
I'm doing good. How are you?
That's great. I'm so excited to have you on the show today. I've only known you for maybe 2-3 months, but I feel like I've known you forever. And so I'm so excited to talk with you today. Why don't you share a little bit about what you do? And also, I'm going to want you to share a little bit about your origin story, what kind of brought you into your nourishing practices. Also, what were you raised in a metaphysical home, or did you kind of just gravitate to that over the years? So you can start wherever you want. I threw a lot at you. So
Yeah. So yeah, we'll start because to fully appreciate where I am now, you have to kind of understand where I came from. So I was raised in, it was called a non-denominational church, but it was kind of Southern Baptist, but a little more, I don't really have the words for it. It was a little more cultish at this point, I could say. And I don't know if it was cultish or that my family just took it to that level. So I want to throw that out there. And I will say, anything I'm saying now, my family has changed. That church has issued apologies to a lot of the people who were hurt in that time. But so we started in this church. I was probably around 2 years old, and my first metaphysical kind of interaction with the spirit world was when my parents moved into the house they currently live in. I had went into the room that was supposed to be my bedroom, and I remember there just being this horrifying looking monster in the corner of the room. And I ran out of there and I told my mom and dad, I'm like, there's a monster in my room. I can see it. It's scary. And 2-year-olds don't know about demons or anything like that. So my parents, and me, I don't even know if there was furniture in the house. I remember this room being pretty sparse. And so I remember my parents calling in the elders of the church. I remember us walking around the house 7 times. They walked around Jericho, and they put oil on my hands. We oiled that place down. But the elders came in and they really prayed over this home. And so that was my first interaction there. And I've had more in my adulthood, but there was a period in my teenage years. I remember I had a close relationship with God, but then at some point it was God went away. It was being very alone. And so then I began to question. I was like, if you're supposed to be here, where are you? And why are all these other things in the spiritual world forbidden to me? Because in my church, I remember we went and stood, there was a palm reader down the road, and we went and stood in front of her building, 30, 40 kids in the youth group, and raised our hands and prayed her out of town. So this is the thing I was raised in. My dad, for perspective, we weren't allowed to drink Sprite for a period of time because Sprite in Spanish to him meant translated to demon, and if we drank Sprite, we would be demon possessed.
Wait, we grew up in the same family.
Yeah, so it's just one of those but to come out of this, it was I didn't really touch base. Well, I'm gonna say this, when I left home, I was obviously, if I'm not a Christian, I must be, a Wiccan or something like that. Mm-hmm. And so people put me in touch with people who knew things, and I was quickly, it was some dark stuff they put me in touch with. I was oh, this ain't it either. This ain't it. So I kind of wandered a spiritual wilderness for a while. And it wasn't until I became a massage therapist, um, somebody was like, you need to go see this lady. Her name's Robin. She's a massage therapist. You need to see her. You need to see her. And finally, one day I went into her office, which was in her house, and she had this room, and there were crystals everywhere, and there was a drum on the wall. And I was a brand new massage therapist, and the massages I had experienced were in a spa setting, and I had never experienced anything like this. And I remember laying on the table and just being in this alternate universe. And this was the sensation I received anyway. I mean, she was giving me my massage, but I remember feeling like there were all of these like spirits around me, like this ancient wisdom, and like just being connected, basically being connected to Creator again. And I remember laying there, and at some point I started crying, and I was just like, oh my God, like I just showed up for a massage. Like, what is happening here? And so that slowly brought me back into the metaphysical world, because then I was able to tap in and intuitively work on people, things that they did not tell me about their medical history. I would be like, hey, like, what you got going on here? Do you know anything about this? I'm like, oh yeah, I forgot to tell you, I had gallstones or whatever. Yeah, so it was like, that was like my place to connect with source and tap into that intuitive place that I have. But it was like a really weird and bizarre journey. So to end up here on a Metaphysical Mississippi podcast is kind of an interesting thing for me. I was like, I have arrived.
Me too.
Yeah, I know. I think your journey is just as bigger than mine.
I started off just wanting to talk about things on my granny's front porch, and look. No,
Yeah.
but when you say, I'm always curious when you just know something about someone. Is it a little voice? Is it just like, when you're saying, oh, you discovered that they have problems near the gallstone where they'd have gallstones? Is it, do you feel like a certain temperature change, or you catch what I'm saying? Or is it just a knowing of?
That is exactly it. It is a knowing. I mean, and there are some things that, yes, there's like a little bit of heat, or there's the texture of the skin just kind of catches my attention. And I'm like, well, like, what is this? But I mean, I have had other times, like one of my clients came in, and I remember putting my hands over her liver, and our liver is associated with anger. And I remember just putting my hand over it, and I was like, do not hit me. And she started laughing, and she goes, how did you know? Like, she's like, in that moment, I was so mad at you. She was like, I really did want to hit you. Like, and I started laughing. She was like, and I don't even know why I'm mad at you. And I was like, you're not actually mad at me. Like, I just happen to be the person closest to you. But she was like, how did you know? I'm like, I don't know how I knew that. I just knew that. And I really did not want you to hit me. But those things they're just knowings. And I think you have to be in a place of stillness to hear them, in which honestly being around a massage table is a perfect place, because most of my clients, I don't talk. My words are, if you want to talk to me during the session, I will gladly listen, answer your questions. But if my mouth is running, my hands are not listening. And so for me, it is a quiet time. So I am available for those knowings and that small, still voice.
No, I've had a massage with you, and it was a very calm and experience. I mean, it was wonderful. But
Thank you.
but I like that you are being in tune with, you're using your tools. But I'm going to just ask a question about the thing you saw when you were 2. Do you still have that ability, or is that something that you just have moved on from that? to see, I mean, I'm assuming it was a spirit or something there, or what? Did
Yes,
y'all
I'm
figure out what
assuming
it
it was a
was?
spirit.
Okay.
What's that?
I mean, did y'all ever did anybody ever identify with an explanation like, oh yeah, that old man died in that house or something, you know?
No, but an interesting fact about that house, nothing ever happened in our house. The house next door to us, everyone who has moved in it has either ended up in divorce, there was a domestic violence incident, and someone ended up murdered in it. Like, and it's
Oh,
been every family that moved in has had something of that. So I really have always kind of thought that whatever was in the house we were in simply moved next door.
okay.
So
Well,
that
I
was
mean,
my
not good for them, but good for you.
right. But as far as seeing, I don't always see, I sense sometimes. And because I'll say, because I'm sure if I've experienced this, someone else has experienced this. Like for a
Yeah.
while, right when I moved out of my house, like, I mean, of course, you like dabble with a Ouija board. And I learned things through that experience that I didn't like. And I, even to this day, I won't, like, I'll buy tarot cards because I'm like, oh, I need to know. And then I'm like, I don't need to know. I don't need to know. But the Ouija board, that was my thing. And I think some of also my background still instilled bits of fear in me.
Yeah.
And so there was one day, I had this Ouija board in the place I was living. And I remember waking up in the middle of the night, just terrified. And I was like, in my head, logically, I'm like, this Ouija board has got to go. So I woke up my boyfriend and I was like, hey, you've got to. And he was like, you are insane. And I'm like crying. I'm like, you just have to take this Ouija board out the house. And he got up and he was like, you're going to follow me to the door. You need to see that it's outside. And so when we got to the door, there was a gentleman at the door who was dropping off some speakers, who played with, he admitted, he's like, I dabble in dark magic. He's like, I am not a nice person. But so when like we got to the door, he just looked at me and he goes, you knew I was coming. And I was like, oh, I don't want to be here right now.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah. And so like, it's one of those, I always go into metaphysical related things with caution and making sure that the person I'm about to interact with has pure intentions, because not everyone does. But that was like one of my most memorable, because he was like, he didn't call, he didn't show up, we didn't hear him pull up. Like, we got to the door and he opened it. He's like, it's not your Ouija board, that was me. And I was just like, oh God, I'm overwhelmed here. So that was way back when, before I really learned,
I mean, what did
a
you
lot
do?
about.
Like say, you're not invited, like you do with vampires. You're not invited. You cannot come to my house.
Yeah, I was just like, I'm glad you're dropping those off. And I told my boyfriend, I was like, we don't hang out with him anymore.
Okay.
And we didn't. So
That is really weird.
So there's still that sensation of like, when someone is like, the hair on the back of your neck stands up, or just that you walk in and you're like, I don't know what it is, but there's something there. Like, those are intuitive hits, and people don't, they're just like, oh, that's a gut instinct. And it is, but I mean, sometimes it is like a sensation from your actual gut, and sometimes it's spirit saying, hey, watch out. Like, they don't have your best interest, at heart.
Yes. So at what, so how long have you been doing massage, or which one was the first? Did you get into yoga first, massage first? I mean, you offer a lot through nourishing practices, retreats, and health coaching, massage therapy, and yoga. Which kind of was your first? Was it massage that you got into first, and then you kind of started dabbling, or did you just kind of dabble in it all at the same time and just?
It's been a process. So I started out in massage therapy, I've struggled with social anxiety most of my life in the job I was in. They wanted to promote me, and I would have to walk into a room and call people back, like, and people were going to see me. And I was like, no. In my panic, I was calling my mom, and my mom was like, hey, somebody I know just went to massage school. I was like, massage school, one person at a time. Perfect. I
Uh-huh.
had never received a massage before. I signed up without ever getting a massage. I also don't like to be touched, or didn't at that point in time in my life. I also didn't like touching other people. Logical sense, go become a massage therapist. So I went with the idea, because I also had a 4-year-old daughter at that point. I was going to go through massage school, make all this money on the weekends, and then support myself while I went through veterinary school. It didn't work that way. I worked for a vet 2 weeks, and I ended up crying in the bathroom the whole time. Luckily, I turned out to be a relatively decent massage therapist. So I've been a massage therapist for 20 years. Probably around year 5, year 7, my body started really hurting.
Oh.
And at that same time, my practice was so busy that I was like, I can't see all these people all the time. Like, I need you to take care of yourself. And I was like, let me teach you how to stretch. Oh, so I went, got a certification as a yoga teacher. No intention of ever teaching a group class. I wanted the knowledge so I could educate my clients here. Here's how you stretch your pecs. Like, that's going to take some pressure off of your back. Like, stretch this out. Let's do some yoga. And then my yoga teacher, she was like, I'm tired of teaching teachers who never teach. She was like, so don't come back until you've taught 5 classes. Put it out there, ended up with 20 people in my first class, and I've just never stopped. I really figured I would teach those 5 weeks and then I would be done, like never teach a group class again. So that's been since Katrina, basically. But from there, like, I was like, okay, I also started realizing I was having some health issues. On top of that, my then significant other had some major health issues as well, and I became a caregiver. And so between the stress of running a business, my own insulin resistance, my own high blood pressure, depression, hair loss, I mean, thyroid issues, you name it, I had it all. And I was exhausted. And I mean, number one, from my physical stuff, but then exhausted from being a caregiver and running a business. So then I decided, I was like, let's get another certification. So I went through the Nutritional Therapy Association and like started learning about nutrition, how to eat well, and then eat for my own individuality. But at the same time, I was very alone in my relationship with my partner. There was not a lot of community. And so I learned to care for myself. So my business went from massage and yoga to nourishing practices, because massage and yoga was not like a all-encompassing name. I mean, I was like, well, let's do nourishing practices, because it's massage, it's yoga. And then eventually it became community. And so that was when the retreat started up, because there were other women who needed to get out and care for themselves, but they may have been scared to travel. So then I like provided this place. Other women are traveling with you. We do all these adventures together. And it's a safe place. And so that also became part of like the stew pot of nourishing practices. And then now, metaphysically related, I also facilitate the Jackson moon circles.
Oh,
and so that is another, that's not on my nourishing practices website, but it is, involved in the metaphysical Mississippi community. But that's just a different take on that piece of connection that sometimes we as women, we get isolated in raising our families. We get isolated, like we go work, come home, we feed our kids, we take care of our spouse, we have, that, and we take care of our home. And it separates us and pulls us away from our community and those things that make us healthy. And so I kind of inherited the Jackson moon circles. It was Jackson circles and ceremonies. And Laura Dearman, who started it, she moved to Florida, and I kind of inherited it and have just kept rolling with it ever since. So she used to do new moon and full moon. And for me right now, just with all my schedule, I can only really facilitate the full moon gathering. So, which I really love to do. It's definitely a unique place and space for women.
Is it and I follow you socially, which I am so impressed. Um, you kind of encouraged me to be more open and out there. You, I'm not sure what it's called. You are active on social media and you share a lot of tips. I feel like you're in the room with me, and I'm not sure what these little videos or are, if they're shorts or, but I watched one that you had put out, I think on Instagram, just a couple of days ago, and I get so busy I forget to comment, but it meant so much to me. I really like that you really have a connection. I think you really have a connection with your clients and people. You know, you do create that community. You know, you
Mm-hmm.
shared one time about going to a women's business luncheon, and there was a buffet, and you chose to nourish your body with your own lunch that you brought, and
Mm-hmm.
how that was a situation where, I mean, that took some courage to not be like everybody else. That encouraged me to stop and think about how I just don't put thoughts to what I'm putting in my mouth. I just don't think about it. I'm not thinking about what's the result of that bag of chips. I'm just going to go in there and grab and eat. So
Mm-hmm.
I just want to tell you that I admire you putting it out there. You're being vulnerable for your community. So thank you, Heidi,
You're
for being
welcome.
vulnerable. I think it is encouraging everyone. And
Thank you. Yeah, that feedback's really good because social media is like this, it's also like this really weird place because I mean, I've had people tell me they're like, "Oh, I follow you." And I'm like, "I didn't know you." They're like, "Well, I can't like or do anything or say anything because I don't want to mess up my algorithm and then like change it all up." And I'm like, it would be nice to know that you like saw it and at least message me and be like, "Oh, that was really valuable. Thank you. Give me
yes,
a thumbs up." So even social media, it's one of those, it gives the illusion of connection. And I have to remind myself that it's a tool, it's not the answer.
that's
But yeah, I like to occasionally throw things out there. It helps to think that nobody sees it, and then you're like, oh, well, I can really truly be myself because no one's going to see
yeah.
this. People do see it, but if I tell myself no one
Okay.
sees it, it feels a lot better.
Or sometimes it's just I'm in awe with what you just said, and I'm speechless, and I feel that I can't compete with your wisdom. So what do I say? Like, but no,
It's okay. You can just say thank you for being a nerd.
it
I'm good
it
with
is
that.
it is it is it is seen and heard. So even though we don't comment on it, so thank you again.
You're welcome.
Um, so what's a typical day? If you want me to mind if I just go into what's a typical day of someone who is living out their life through your nourishing practices? What do you do? What's your kind of, are you just juggling all these different type of things that you're offering? Because you just seem like a Renaissance woman when it comes to just you can do everything.
No, I don't. Um, so yes, I'll answer that, but I want this disclaimer as like, I just ate a bunch of salted caramels because earlier I'm also in a social work program with the graduation date at the end of 2023. But in order to do that, I have to finish all my core classes before May. And I just discovered, like, I thought I had it planned out. I was only going to have 3 classes this fall, 3 classes in the spring, and then slide into this internship. And it's not going to be that way. I have 5 classes in the spring. I also run this business, and like I have family and friends too. And I'm just like, oh my God, what have I done to myself? So I ate a whole bunch of salted caramels, feeding my emotions. So when people are like, oh, you do all this health coaching, like, I'm human. Like, that's one of the hardest things. Like today, I went to that same luncheon. I ate before I went in case they didn't have any food I could eat. And the lady across from me, she was like, you're a health coach and I'm eating. I'm like, I don't want you to feel bad about eating your food in front of me. Like, I literally don't care what you eat. Like, I don't know your dietary restrictions. I don't know what goal you're working. Like, I'm not casting any judgment. Somebody else at the table might be, but it's not going to be coming from me. I'm like, please sit down, eat your food and be happy. But so a typical day in, which I think this is a great question, Emily. I want to just like let you know that, because a lot of people do forget that like social media is this highlight reel, and that there's these moments when you're an entrepreneur that there's chaos. And so a typical day is I get up, I'm a slow starter in the morning, coffee. I am eating breakfast usually within 30 minutes of getting up, some kind of protein-based deal to manage my blood sugar. But after that, it's like, I think people forget that homemaking is also magic. So I take a few minutes, and I'm going to say we live in a camper, so it's not this beautiful place. Basically, I straighten everything up so it doesn't look like chaos when I get back, so that my boyfriend's not like, what hurricane or tornado went through here before you left for work? But so it like there's a little bit of that creating magic when I'm like, okay, I am going to pick this up, I'm going to chop this for dinner later. Like, I'm going to just kind of prepare my space with intention for that. Usually Tuesdays and Thursdays, I teach yoga at a YMCA. I fly in there. I try to coordinate my exercise and time at the gym with that, since I'm already there. It's kind of like an anchoring thing. Like, I'm at the gym, you have no reason to go get on the treadmill. So I really have to prioritize movement, because that's the thing that keeps my blood sugar in check. That's the thing that keeps me mentally healthy, keeps depression at bay, and it makes learning much easier. So while it's the one thing I'm like, I cannot justify 30 minutes on a treadmill today, I cannot justify 20 minutes of lifting weights, I'm like, but actually it makes all the rest of my world easier. And my dad died very young because he didn't care for himself. And I'm like, if I want to do this till I'm 80, like, I need to go get on that treadmill. Like, 30 minutes out the day for that is nothing. So I squeeze that in somewhere. I come here to Holistic Health and Healing, where my office is based. And it just depends on the day. Sometimes I have massages on the books. Sometimes I have individual health coaching clients on the books. And then sometimes I have a group coaching class on the books. So it's very, very varied. I keep telling myself I'm going to simplify my life, but reality is I'm not.
Well, I mean, you're not, things are not mundane and boring. There's constant change, so I mean, actually, I'm the type of person who really, I probably thrive more in chaos sometimes than I do if things are planned out, and
Well, I mean, I have often joked about being addicted to chaos. Like, my counselor at one point, she was like, you're an adrenaline junkie. I'm like, I am not. Like, I'm not going to jump out of an airplane, but in my actual life, I will create enough chaos to feel that adrenaline rush. Yeah. If life gets smooth and I'm like, oh, this is going well, I'm like, what can I add to my appointment book? Or what other class can I take? Like, literally, I will do that to myself. So I do know, over time, I will find a space where I'm like, all right, we're going to kind of like people quit coffee. I'm going to be like, I quit chaos, but I'm not there yet.
oh, yeah, that's a goal.
Well, I was just gonna say, I think everybody has a place that they're comfortable with chaos. Some people are comfortable with chaos in their family life, but have strict boundaries. Like, no, work is going to be in this. Whereas me, I have if a person or like life situation personally is chaotic, I'm like, nope, out, gone, change. This is changing. This is unacceptable. But work life, for whatever reason, well, I mean, we'll talk about addiction here. I mean, a health coach, so nothing is off limits. Is that work is one of the most socially accepted addictions out there. And if you
Yeah,
have that drive, it's really prioritized, and we don't often question, okay, cool, is it actually healthy for me?
yeah.
Yeah,
And you can justify it as, look,
exactly.
provision. I've just provided. So it's you get that attaboy at the end.
Yes. So that is
Oh,
my thing that I know I am working towards. I am working towards that. It's a little bit more balance.
mhm. And then you realize that you work so much that you're forgetting to sleep or you're not prioritizing sleep. We're going to take a short break. Make sure to follow Heidi's Nourishing Practices on Facebook and Instagram, as well as check out her website, nourishingpractices.com. For the next Metaphysical Mississippi meetup, November 9th at Holistic Health and Healing, 132 Riverview Drive, Suite D in Flowood, Mississippi. Now back to the discussion. How do you balance a client? And you're dealing with very intimate subjects with your clients, and
Mhm.
you kind of get into that friend zone. I mean, it's a little bit, how do you different? Is every client your friend? Is where do you
Um,
draw those boundaries of where does that being a practitioner and helping them come to, I'm not your emergency contact. Do you understand what I'm saying?
I do understand what you're saying, because so even now when you go through massage school or you take an ethics class, they talk about the power differential between a massage therapist and their client. Or even if you're a yoga teacher, the differential between being a teacher and a student. Um, and so there's like this gray area. And like it was very staunchly taught when I went through massage schools, like your clients are not your friends. Like you don't acknowledge, because privacy issues. If you see them in a public place, you do not acknowledge they exist. They can say hey to you first, but you don't acknowledge that you know them first. Um,
Oh,
and so number one, part of my personality, like if you don't know me, I can be, people think people have told me this. They're like, I'm glad I got to know you through this venue or this venue, because otherwise I thought you were very unapproachable. You were very like a snob, very quiet. And I'm not. I am an observer, so I'm going to observe a
yeah.
lot before I come in. But so for some reason, like that for me somewhat helps, because not everybody wants to like automatically be my friend, because I'm not just always that warm, bubbly person. I can get very serious very fast.
Yeah.
But having those rigid boundaries between myself and all of my massage clients, because all of my world has been in a spa or around a massage table, like my social world and making friends outside of that was slim to none. So for a lot of years I had no friends. And then eventually, it wasn't honestly until I went through my divorce and like some of my clients came forward and they were like, I don't exactly know what's going on, but I kind of feel I do. And I want you to know that this is and so they started sharing like their not massage stories. They were just like, these are my life journey stories. And I felt very seen and I felt very heard. And then when you are seen and heard on such a level, like you do become friends. There is some friendship, and there's varying degrees. Some people I like hit it off with and and then other people it's different. So I've had a conversation with some of my closest friends, and she'll tell you, I'm sure she remembers the day I told her, I was like, I need you to find other friends. I can't be your one and only. Like you're going through a lot and I can't be the only person you're processing this with. I said, you need a counselor, you need someone else, like you need a guy friend to bounce this off of. And so I would say at this point, I've really worked hard, and I'll say these changes happened honestly. I'm 45. They've happened in the past 8 years, that I've really worked hard to find friends. I have friends I go kayaking with. I have friends I work out with. I have friends I nerd out about entrepreneurship about. I have a metaphysical group that I hang out with. Not one person is like my all. Like I have some BFFs, but it's kind of like, so when I say this, I have friendships with clients, it's at different levels. And each, yeah, it's kind of an organic thing. And now I will say with health coaching clients, that is different because especially since I work with a lot of people, my primary audience is people who struggle with disordered eating. So when they come in, it's just like walking in to see your counselor. What is said in this room, it does not go any further. So it's also, people may not know that they are seeing me for that. So I don't acknowledge them when I'm out and about because I want them to have that privacy. Now, if they do come up to me and say, hey, like, you know, this is so-and-so and I want you to meet, then I'm cool with it. But I do, as you know, when I have on my health coach hat and I see a person in that dynamic, I am very respectful of their boundaries. And I think because I am so respectful of all of my people's boundaries, they're very respectful of my boundaries. So I've not felt I've had a huge conflict of interest. I mean, there have been things that have happened, friendships that ended, but I think they would have ended anyway, regardless of whether I was their massage therapist or not. Like, we're human, stuff happens, people change, people disagree. So yeah, there's that. It's nuanced, it's gray. There's not a black and white answer for it. Right now I'm working on my bachelor's of social work. The funny thing is when you become a health coach, like, so when I moved from Louisiana to Mississippi, my nutrition certification was not accepted here in Mississippi. And I was looking through all the legalities. They were like, but we could really use some health coaches. So I became a health coach and I started applying for health coaching positions because when I was here and when you move states, it's hard to like just really build a massage clientele just like that to pay your bills. I was like looking for a job. And the funny thing is all of the health coaching positions that we're hiring wanted a bachelor's in nursing, a bachelor's in social work, bachelor's in psychology. So even though I had all these certifications, like getting into a corporate type job required that bachelor's. The funny thing is practicing with my health coaching, all the things I'm learning in social work just really complement and add to what I'm doing as a health coach. And by the time I have the bachelor's degree, I won't need a corporate job. So I'm just like, it is what it is. I'll now have a bachelor's degree.
No, that's great.
I do have a couple of events coming up. I always have the full moon circle on the full moon from 7 to 9 here at Holistic Health and Healing. If any would like to join, just reach out to me. You can email me at HeidiGill@live.com. All my information is on the website at nourishingpractices.com. What else?
I'll put those in the description notes.
Perfect. And then I do have a digestive wellness 101 workshop coming. I think it's next Wednesday, but I don't have that. My planner's over there. Yeah, so I'll put that on my website so people can just keep that because I'll have that pretty much once a month. And then November 1st, we'll start off the next 6 weeks, food journaling as a mindfulness tool workshop. And I love that workshop so much. And the people who have attended it loved it so much that they're actually repeating it next time, because it's just like a jumping off point. Like, you're not ever going to learn all of the lessons about your food in 6 weeks. It just kind of gives you the tool to get started. So those that are wanting to rehab their relationship with food and body image, they can come on in. I will have an in-person that night. It's the last 6 weeks. It's on Tuesday from 5:30 to 6:30 here at Holistic Health and Healing. And then I have an online version as well, from 7 to 8 for those that are not local. So you don't actually have to be in Jackson. You can be wherever and attend that as well.
Oh, that's wonderful. Yes, I'll put all your website information on the notes. What are the pros and cons to basically working for yourself and being in control of everything, and compared to actually working for a wellness center, or you kind of said corporate. I don't know if corporate is the right wording if you work for a wellness center, but basically you own your own business, nourishing
Mhm,
practices, and you rent a space for your practice.
mhm.
Compared, have you done both? I mean, I
I
know,
have done both. I
and
have.
what's the pros and cons, if you don't mind sharing?
Um, I'll start with the pros because obviously the pros
Yes.
have weighed out that I've remained an entrepreneur for 20 years.
Mhm.
Um, I love the ability to be in control of my schedule. Like if my daughter had a soccer practice or a game I needed to be at, my clients willingly moved. Because number one, I don't willy-nilly move my clients. If I said, hey, this come up, they're like, yes, like we'll move for you. Um, in my period as a caregiver, like I was able to be very flexible with my clients and my caregiving responsibilities. Um, I also love that. So when you work for someone else, they can fire you. Like you don't
Yeah.
know, like that next week your job may be over. When you own your own business, you have signs of, hey, this isn't working. And so you have the ability to navigate and change what you're doing.
Oh, I like that.
So you are completely in control of, like, you're not in control of what the universe necessarily throws at you, but you
Right.
are in control of how you handle that and react to it and navigate and pivot. Um, so
You're able to
that's
pivot.
yeah, so that's the part I really love about that. I have worked for people in the past, and I will say I struggled. I worked for a big corporation, massage corporation, when I moved here. And I was kind of grossed out by some of the things that did not consider cleanliness or safe.
Yeah.
But I had no control over that. I had no control over my schedule. Like if my back was hurting, like there was no real, hey, I need to not see this many people this week until my back recovers, and then I can pick up, seeing more people next week. There is financial stability in working for someone else for the most part, which is nice. Like it does have its own benefit, but again, addicted to chaos. Let me not have anything predictable in my life.
Right. But then, like you said, they could fire you next week and you don't know it.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
it's, oh, yeah.
Well, and as I think it was my dad I used to have this conversation with, and it was like, I like control, but control is an illusion. I
Mhm.
like safety, but guess what? Safety is also an illusion. And so when we have these 9-to-5 jobs that we're like, this is safe, it is guaranteed, that also is an illusion. Just like, and I also compare owning a business to like your business as a toddler. You can never take your eye off of it for half a minute. Like you always are working on it. What is it doing? What's happening over here? What's happening in the books? What's happening on the appointment book? So like you have that level of responsibility when you have a small business. This is kind of like
Yeah.
wrangling a toddler. You're just not sure
Yeah.
what direction it's going to take.
But you have the flexibility to go
Yeah.
and do and move with it. I mean, I feel a change coming. I think in the whole world,
Mm-hmm.
entrepreneurship is gonna be, nobody really wants to work. Our time, control of our time, I think, is gonna be more of a commodity in the future than money. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
money will always be,
Oh yeah.
but really being able to control your time and know that if you work hard, you'll benefit. I mean, who are you gonna who you gonna work hardest for? For yourself,
Right.
you know? And I mean, I was just thinking of being a business owner. nowadays and get an employee, that anybody who is really a valuable employee, they're going to be cost a lot of money, you know. So
Mhm.
anyway, but no, that's just been on my mind. So I wanted to get your take on
Yeah.
that.
Um,
It is.
I do agree with you that there is a shift. And so, um, because I've entertained the idea, it's like, what happens if one day I'm like, I don't want this drive of being an entrepreneur? Because my brain goes all the time. Like I'm thinking like, well, is this going to be a social media post? Do I need to didn't send out an email? Oh, I didn't make this
Yes.
video. Like, so at some point my head is like, we could just go to work for somebody else and like not have to think about anything.
Yes.
Yeah. So being an entrepreneur, like you always hear the joke of like, I traded my 8 to 5 for a 24/7. That's kind of an
That's a good
entrepreneur.
one. Yes.
Yeah, so you really have to like it. And I do, but sometimes I'm like, well, maybe I don't. There will come a point I won't want to push. And so the bachelor's degree will give me that option if I want to go into a
Yeah.
different field, like maybe go to work for someplace else instead of myself. But one of the things I've kind of noticed lately in some of like the health coaching forums and jobs, they only hire part-time.
That's
Part of that is they don't have to cover health insurance. Like, so some people are choosing this kind of hybrid life of working part-time as like a virtual assistant
right.
or part-time as a health coach for like this big corporation. And then
Right.
the rest of the time they're doing like massage therapy, yoga teaching, or whatever that is. So for some people, there's this hybrid approach of they have this guaranteed income that makes it feel safe for them to do this other entrepreneur stuff.
Yes.
So there is a shift in the job market, whether we like it or not, whether it's good or bad, I think depends on the person.
I would love to come to a retreat sometime. I mean, so much estrogen in one area. Do you only have women, or do you sometimes have co-ed?
Um, Up till now, it's only been for women. We call it the Rest, Connect, and Revive Retreat. And so me and my friend Brittany Hughes, we co-host this together. We start out with a loose agenda, and it's loose because we were supposed to have yoga Saturday morning at this last retreat, and I
Uh-huh.
got up, and at 9 o'clock, everybody was still asleep, and I was like, all right, I guess we're not doing yoga today. But we ended up doing yoga later that afternoon under some pine trees and watching the sunset. It was beautiful.
Oh my God.
So it's more about, and the ladies, we did some breakfast, we talked, we wandered around the park, we did some hiking. At some point they were like, you know what, I need a nap. They all wandered off, took their naps, came back to our cabin. At the end of the day, we had conversation. And so that's really what it's about. Number one, because when you're an adult, it's hard to meet new people, it's hard to make friends.
Yeah.
And this is an opportunity for women to get away, take a nap, have conversations they wouldn't normally have, meet people they don't know.
Oh.
And that's it. Like it's a no pressure type retreat, which I love.
So this isn't just a group of girlfriends just coming together. So how do people find out about it? Is it just mainly through your website, or people who know you already, or is it word of mouth? How does
It's pretty much word of mouth. I will put it on my website. If you're on my email list, you'll probably get an email about it before it happens. There's also the Rest, Connect, Revive Facebook group. It is a private group. That way, when we travel, like we can post in there and it's not, the world doesn't know where we're at. So if you want to be in the know for the upcoming retreats, maybe go over and look at that. And we'll post there. So it'll likely be spring. We always have one in the fall, either October, November. But there's been enough demand. People do want one in the spring. So we'll probably add that to the roster pretty soon.
At these retreats, are they usually within a Louisiana, Mississippi area, or do you go further? Or is it just kind of...
Usually we've tried to keep them within Louisiana, Mississippi. For most people, like we try to keep it within an hour to 2 hour drive from their house. Like
Yeah.
So it depends. We have had people ask if we could go to Hot Springs, Arkansas, or if we could go
Oh,
to
yeah.
Orange Beach. So we're not opposed to having them at a farther location. We are just very, very aware that, especially with people who come to these retreats, sometimes are caregivers, and their financial
You're nourishing.
wiggle room is small. So if we can keep it close, keep it in a state park. State park cabins are usually pretty reasonable.
Yeah.
So we try to keep the cost of it 300 or less.
This would be a wonderful gift to give to a caregiver, wouldn't it?
Yes. Yes.
Oh my goodness.
So
Do
that's,
you have something in place, like if someone is thinking of
I have gift certificates for nourishing practices like massage therapy and health
yeah.
coaching and stuff, but I don't have any for the retreat. That is a good idea though. However, like when a retreat's coming up, if you know of a caregiver that you would like to sponsor and call and pay for their spot, you are more than welcome to do that. We have actually done that in the past.
That's lovely.
Yes. So if you know someone, you're like, that person really needs to get away, and I know they'll never justify paying that on their own, you're
Yes.
more than welcome to sponsor them and, you know,
Sponsor them.
make them, find them a babysitter and like tell them to
Yes.
go retreat themselves.
That private Facebook page is Rest, Connect, Revive Retreat 2022. Emily and Heidi are going to discuss a little more about social media. Here's another thing about social media is when you're putting yourself out there, though, and you're being vulnerable, it'll still always kind of be around.
Yeah.
You know, but I'm not going to worry about it though. I mean, I look back at all the, ooh, I shouldn't have made that face there, you know, or I shouldn't have said that, or, you know, I just shared a little too much, you know,
Yeah.
learning that fine line of being vulnerable and really when you know authentically you need to be vulnerable because, well, not to say, hey, listen to me, share my story, but hey, I know where you are. Listen to me share my story
Mm-hmm.
so we can get out of this together. You know, it's
One of my business coaches, her word of advice when sharing something more on the vulnerable side was, don't share something when you're in the thick of it. Like if you're going through something really tough and you're emotionally charged, that is not the time to talk about it because you haven't processed it yet. You haven't learned all the lessons from it. So her thing was, wait until you can talk about it from a place where you're not emotionally vomiting on your stuff onto other people, when you can be like, I've walked through this and this is what I've learned. So because being transparent and open, because sometimes I've struggled with the word vulnerable, which being on social media, it is vulnerable because there's always going to be a troll that's going to pick at that. They're going to see that one spot that's going to tear you apart and find it.
yeah.
But if we can look at it as being transparent and being authentic, it makes it feel a little better. And I used to get really paranoid or like be real self-critical with pictures and videos, and I'm like, make sure the angle's just right or all this. And finally I was doing yoga videos. This is where I had the issue, and I was like, oh my God, when I bend over, like this abundance of belly just overflows out of my yoga pants and child's pose. Like, you know, nobody wants to see that, like, because we all have our inner critic.
Right.
And I was just like, so I allowed those thoughts around my own body stop me from helping other people. And then one day I was like, your yoga students have been watching you do this pose for 8 years now. Literally no one cares. And I'm like, the only person who's not comfortable seeing me be me is me. And that's because I don't see myself all the time. So I had to put it, I was like, when I bend over, everybody else sees that roll. I'm the only one who doesn't. I'm literally the only one uncomfortable. So once I kind of made that transition with that, I was like, you know, people see my double chin all the time when I'm cutting up. I'm the only one that's self-conscious of that. And so at that point, I'm like, yeah, take the picture, let's roll. Video, cool. It may not be the world's flattering angle, because angles are important. But at the same time, like if it's going to stop me from helping another person because it's not perfect,
Yes.
you just got to let it go. So that's kind of my biggest takeaway was I was the only one uncomfortable seeing myself. Everybody else saw me and loved me and accepted me. So why should I not love and accept myself
And that's
in
a
all
big,
angles?
that's a big thing
Hmm.
to get to that point. And I'm
Yeah.
only getting to that point now. I had to turn big old 5-0 to do it too.
Hmm.
Um, you were talking about sharing. I've had moments where I have vomited out situations, and I probably have lost friends because of it, because like you said, when you tell that friend, you need to find you another friend, I'm sure I've been that friend who had to go find that other friend, you know. But yeah, yeah. So
Yeah. Well, and I will also say, like, find friends that are okay knowing that you're saying that from a place of love. And if they can't
right.
accept that, then that probably wasn't a great friendship to begin with. Because I'm gonna tell you, that friend did roll like a little bit. She was like, that kind of hurt. She was like, but I understand where you're coming from. And now she has a beautiful group of friends for a bunch of different parts of her life. And some of them we share together and some of them we don't. And I'll also, like the other day, somebody shared this beautiful thing about friendships, and it's like she compared it to your clothing. And she was like, we have seasons for clothing like that. And it was a bubble suit. It's like that bubble jacket that was really in style. She's like, you're not going to wear that in the summer. She's like, and you probably, if it's out of season, you're going to get rid of it. She was like, friendships are the same way. I think we're conditioned to think that if we're friends with somebody in kindergarten, we should still be friends with them in the retirement home. And yeah, and that's not how it happens. Like, we change, we grow, we move, and we may outgrow people, or people may outgrow us. And I don't know that we should necessarily take it personal when friendships evolve, change, or because we also use that term, we lost a friend, they're no longer our friend. Maybe they are, just the dynamics changed. And that maybe when they're done walking that journey, or we're done walking ours, the friendship will come back around.
Yes.
But I think that pressure to have a friendship for all of your life or long term and it never changes is an unrealistic expectation. That there are seasons with the weather, that there are seasons with friendships as well.
Yeah. Thanks for joining us today. Check out Heidi's website. It is nourishingpractices.com. All right. We'll see you next time. Bye, everybody.
Bye.
The views expressed by guests are their own, and their appearance on the program does not imply an endorsement of them or any entity they represent.